So Steven Spielberg has a new movie coming out in November. It's called Lincoln. You've probably seen the pictures or the trailer. It's going to be great, right? I mean, it's one of the historical epics. I start to think that Spielberg now makes three different kinds of movies, right? He makes these historical epics that he really cares about. He makes sort of a Lincoln or a Schindler's List, right, is the classic example. And he makes the kind of mawkish, emotional ones, so War Horse, right, which I didn't think was very good, although Spielberg really knows how to point a camera, so it looked great. And then he makes the science fiction movies, right? So Lincoln coming out has made me think of something that's been bothering me about Spielberg's science fiction for years. I came to Steven Spielberg movies the same way people of my age do, I guess, through Jaws and Close Encounters, right? Close Encounters, if you have not seen it in decades, is an amazing movie. It's fantastic, right? I mean, it's just suspenseful. Every beat works. It goes on forever, and you wish it was even longer. I mean, that's why you could release that special edition. Like, give us more of this movie. The relationship between the mom who loses her kid to the aliens is incredible, and Richard Dreyfuss is great, right? Playing this guy who's kind of on the ground in the midst of a first contact situation. But of course, you can also read Close Encounters in a very different metaphoric way, and this is why science fiction is so terrific, right? Because it's really kind of secretly about the dissolution of a family. This guy, Richard Dreyfuss, is sort of getting dissipated. He gives in his own obsessions and leaves his family. He leaves his wife, leaves Terry Garr, which is like crazy talk because you don't leave Terry Garr, and kids, and goes off because he goes kind of nuts. And even though he's validated at the end, right, it turns out that he wasn't nuts. There really were aliens coming. The movie still exists on this metaphoric plane, so you can have the textual one of like, oh, it's aliens and there's science fiction, and also the subtextual one of like, where's daddy going, right? Of trying to explain in the 70s where these daddies went. And of course, Spielberg was always working on kind of father issues. In his science fiction especially, right? Like, where's the dad in E.T.? It's just not there. Good science fiction always does this, right? You think about the first couple of seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And of course, the reason Buffy works is that in addition to being this great paranormal adventure, it also might all kind of be happening in Buffy's head in a weird way. I don't mean that she's crazy, and I said some of the same thing in an earlier Observation Deck episode about Beasts of the Southern Wild, right? Where you don't have to know really whether the science fiction is literal or metaphoric. It works at both levels. It's supposed to. That's part of the fun. Now, let's jump forward a few decades to another Spielberg science fiction movie, War of the Worlds, right? Which could have been great and was pitched as, what it would be like to be in the middle of an alien invasion, but not be like the scientist in charge, which is who the hero was in the George Powell 1950s War of the Worlds, right? But just be a guy on the ground surrounded by this stuff. And again, it's a father in disrepair, right? The main character is a father who's not connected with his family anymore. He's supposed to be kind of a schlubby New Jersey dude who isn't in touch with his kids. But this time, instead of Richard Dreyfuss, Spielberg casts Tom Cruise. Now, when you cast Tom Cruise in a movie, you get Tom Cruise, and I actually like him. He can be great, and when he's playing Tom Cruise, when the movies kind of do this thing where it's like he's hosting the Oscars. Whenever he makes an appearance, the movie kind of stops for a second, goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Cruise," and he comes in and he does Tom Cruise stuff, which is great. But in War of the Worlds, the emotional subtext was supposed to be about a father reconnecting with his family through trauma, right? And instead, you get Tom Cruise, Tom cruising around, right? He throws a grenade into a Martian tripod or something, and he actually does become the hero. So imagine if Steven Spielberg still cast movies the way he used to in the 70s. And I'm not the first person to say this. Actually, Bill Wasik, a colleague of mine, was talking about this earlier too with the metaphor thing. But imagine if instead of casting Tom Cruise, he had cast, let's say, Philip Seymour Hoffman as the hero in War of the Worlds. Now, he's got to move the master. It's going to be artistic and amazing. But imagine if the father in War of the Worlds had been schlubby, right? Imagine if the father in War of the Worlds had been somebody who you didn't see as an action hero. It would restore the metaphor. Steven Spielberg is a guy who seriously knows how to point a camera. But Lincoln reminds me that I wish that he spent as much time today on the emotional core of the science fiction as he does on historical epics.